Hi everyone. This is Term 2, Economic Management Sciences. And in our previous lesson, we have just covered the revision of what we have done in Term 1. Okay, so we have covered the revision under lesson number 7 of Unit 2. And today we're going to go to Unit number 12 on page 85. Lesson number 11 on page 85. This is still under unit number 2. In lesson number 11, we are going to look at entrepreneurship. And under entrepreneurship, we are going to look at factors of production. Remember, when we started at the beginning of term 1, I said economic management sciences is broken down into 3 sections, which one is the economy, the second one is financial literacy, and the third one is the entrepreneurship. Okay, and in term 1 we only looked at the economy and we looked at financial literacy. So this term we are going to look at all 3. We are going to look at economy, financial literacy, and entrepreneurship. And we are starting with entrepreneurship in lesson number 11, page 85 of your textbook. Okay, so what are the learning aims for this section? So we are going to look at factors of production. So at the end of this lesson, you must be able to distinguish between owned and borrowed capital. We know capital is money by now, okay, that is used to start up a business or to use in a business. You must be able to distinguish between unskilled, semi-skilled, and skilled labor. Okay, in term 1, we have just looked generally in labor force, but now we are going to distinguish the labor into unskilled, semi-skilled, and skilled labor. You must be able to understand the role of workers in the business. You must be able to understand fair employment practices. You must be able to grasp the importance of natural resources. This one we have already touched on it. Also, not only in EMS, only also in technology. You must be able to understand entrepreneurship and understand remuneration of factors of production. Okay, so let's start by understanding what is production. Okay, production is the process during which natural resources are used to create usable products for consumers to satisfy their needs or wants. Certain inputs are required to make this process possible. These inputs are known as factors of production. Okay, now we understand what is the or what are the factors of production. I will read this paragraph again. Production is the process during which what? Natural resources are used to create usable products for consumers to satisfy their needs. Please know this definition. As is, don't write me stories of what you think production is when asked in the exam or test. Just study your textbooks. Certain inputs are required to make production process possible. So these inputs are known as factors of production. So factors of productions are inputs that are required to make the production process possible. An entrepreneur has the ability to combine all the factors of production to manage a successful business. The 4 main factors of production includes 1. Natural resources, 2. Capital, 3. Labor, 4. Entrepreneurship. I repeat again, the 4 main factors of productions are natural resources, 1. 2 capital, 3 labor, and 4 entrepreneurship. In this lesson, we will take a more in-depth look at each of the factors of production, as well as where and how they fit into the production process. Okay, so we start with the first factor of production, which is capital. But we need to know a few definitions before we go through capital. We have borrowed capital, which is the capital borrowed from a financial institution, such as a bank, to finance a business. So you need to know the definition of borrowed capital. It's the capital borrowed from the financial institution, such as a bank, to finance a business. And we have capital. What is this capital? It's the financial input required to produce goods and services. And what are capital goods? It's land, buildings, and equipment, okay, used to produce goods and services. So capital goods are land, buildings, and equipment that is used to produce goods and services. And we have own capital. It's the capital provided from an entrepreneur's own pocket. So it's what the business person provide for the business from their own pocket. We call it own capital. So please know and understand these definitions under the first factor of production, which is the capital. We have borrowed capital, own capital, we have capital, and we have capital goods. You need money to start a business. The money used to start a business and run a business is called capital. Capital refers not only to money, but also land, buildings, and equipment, which we call capital goods, that are used to produce goods and services. These are called capital goods. Okay, and we go to page 86 at the top there. And own and borrowed money. A person may use their own money to finance a new business, which is called own capital. Sometimes, however, a person does not have enough money to start a business, which is why they often need to borrow capital. Borrowed capital may be obtained from banks or other financial institutions. Interest is charged on the borrowed amount, and the person must repay the capital plus the interest to the financial institution over a period. If you go to the bank now, you want to start a business, you borrow 200,000, the bank will give you 200,000, but they will charge interest, okay, and you will have to pay 200,000 plus the interest over a period of time that you and the bank agree on. If you cannot repay the money that you borrowed from the bank, your personal belongings will be repossessed and sold to settle the debt. So if you owe the bank 200,000 or 300,000 because you couldn't pay, the bank has got a right to come and repossess, for example, your house and sell it, and they can settle their debt. Okay, and we've got different sources of capitals now. Okay, so the 4 sources of capitals that we have here, it's the savings, which fall under own capital. It's the inheritance. If your parents or your grandparents, they leave you something when they die, then you have a inheritance, that is also own capital. And there's loans from relatives or friends, which is borrowed capital. And there's loans from financial institutions such as banks, which is also borrowed capital. So please know the sources of capital. The 2 sources of own capital are savings and inheritance, and the two sources of borrowed capital is loans from relatives and friends and loans from financial institutions such as banks. Now we look at the second factor of production, which is labor. Obviously, we need to start by the terminology and learning the definition of a few terminology that is involved. Labor is the work that people do, and semi-skilled labor is laborers with some training, and skilled laborers are laborers who have a formal qualification to do work, and unskilled laborers without any training. Please, again, I repeat myself, study these definitions and know them as they are in the book. Don't write stories, okay? You need to learn to study and know, memorize the definitions in the book, okay? So let's go through them again. Labor is the work that people do. Semi-skilled labor, it's laborers with some training, okay? And skilled labor is laborers who have a formal qualification to do work, and unskilled labor, it's laborers without any training. Labor is the work people do in order to deliver products and services. This refers not only to physical activities, but also the mental labor that people perform. Labor is one of the factors of production needed to produce goods and services, and is performed by people with different levels of training. It is divided into three different categories, namely unskilled labor, semi-skilled labor, and skilled labor. Now we will go in details on the definitions that we have learned above. We start with unskilled labor. Certain forms of labor do not require any special training or experience to perform. Businesses use unskilled laborers who have no or minimal high school education to perform this task. This type of labor is usually physical in nature. Manual labor, for example, garden workers, cleaners, and farm workers. So if you don't get your high school education right, you will be categorized as unskilled labor one day, and you will be doing physical labor. And the type of work that you'll be doing, it's garden workers, cleaners, and farm workers. And we look at the second type of labor, the semi-skilled labor. Semi-skilled labor refers to people who have some sort of training in certain field. These people only perform work in the field in which they received their training. For example, cashiers, security guards, and taxi drivers, etc. Okay, so you are only trained in that field. So you've got some sort of training. Okay, and the third one, which is the last one, it's the skilled labor. Skilled labor refers to people who have formal qualification, such as a degree or a diploma, that they acquired at a tertiary institution, such as university or college. Since these individuals have a higher level of education, they have a broader vision. Okay, so if you want to have a broader vision, you must ensure that you finish your high school, get your formal qualification through a tertiary institution, and you will have a broader vision than other workers, and you will have more responsibilities in a business. For example, doctors, engineers, accountants, teachers, and etc. Employees are classified and compensated according to the type of work they can perform, as well as their duties and responsibilities. Okay, therefore, Unskilled laborers are therefore paid less than skilled laborers. It is clear to see that education and training is an important aspect in determining how well a person gets paid for their type of work they perform. And this is directly linked to what we have done in term one in terms of standard of living. So obviously, if you are paid, if you are skilled, you are paid well, you will have a high standard of living. And if you are unskilled, you are paid less, your standard of living will be low. So the choice is yours, and you still have the time to make the wise and smart decision now. Where do you want to fall in life? Now, at the bottom of page 87, we are looking at the role of workers in a business. So we know different types of workers, which are unskilled labor, semi-skilled labor, and skilled labor. So we look at the role of workers in a business. But before we do that, let's look at the terminology. We've got human capital, which is the people who work in a business. We've got salary, that is a compensation an employee received for work done each month. Okay, salary an employee get each month. And then we have a wage, compensation an employee received for work done each week. So people who work in a business, we call them human capital. And the money that they get each month they have worked, it's called a salary. But if they get money per week, we call it the wage. Workers play a vital role in success or failure of a business. Workers are called human capital and perform work for the business so that it can make profit. Okay, remember the aim of any business is to make profit. A good worker is productive in the workplace and is an asset to the business. One of the biggest expenses a business has in the production process is the payment of salaries and wages. It is therefore essential that each worker does their part. A business must appoint people who have necessary qualifications and training. If workers are well and properly managed, they can be one of the business most valuable assets. Workers also differ in the level of productivity they deliver each day. Not every worker maintains the same level of productivity. In other words, one worker may produce more in a given time frame than another worker. So we are not the same, okay? And we don't behave the same every day. Think about your friends and the other learners in the class. Not all of them do their homework. Yeah, you know yourself if you don't do your homework. And not all of them do their homework every day or complete all the tasks. Where the other students complete their daily homework and classwork. Okay, it is clear to see that workers' actions and thoughts play a vital role in the success of the business. Also, for yourself as a learner, your work ethic plays a very big role in the success of your studies as well. And since we have laborers working for companies, there must be fair employment practices. Otherwise, people will be exploited by the businesses, which means they will be used unfairly. Okay, so let's look at fair employment practices. Because of the inequalities of the past that existed in South Africa, certain laws and strategies have been implemented to ensure that these imbalances and inequalities can be corrected. For example, these laws are Labor Relations Act, Basic Conditions of Employment Act, Occupational Health and Safety Act, Compensation for Occupational Injuries and Disease Act, and Employment Equity Act. These laws are implemented to ensure that there is fair employment practices, okay, and to correct the imbalances and the inequalities of the past. It is important that businesses obey these laws and treat employees fairly. If these laws are not obeyed, a business may face legal action, which may lead to major losses for the business if found guilty. So businesses, they must obey these laws and work within them. According to the South African labor laws, an employee may not exceed the following working hours. So you must not exceed 45 hours in a work week. You cannot exceed 10 hours per work week and 9 hours per day if employed for 5 days or less per week. You cannot exceed 8 hours per day if employed for more than 5 days per week. That is the end of the second factor of production, which is labor. Okay, so now we look at the third factor of production, that is natural resources. And we've got only one definition of natural resources, which are resources, for example, like gold, coal, etc., that are taken directly from nature as raw materials. So example is coal, gold, and wood, for example. Okay, and at the top of page 89 there, we start with natural resources. Natural resources refer to the resources that come straight from nature. For example, land, water, minerals, coal, gold, plants, and animals. Many businesses use natural resources to produce goods, which means natural resources are factors of production. It is impossible for a business to operate without the use of natural resources. As discussed in unit number 1, that was in term 1, people needs and wants are unlimited, but the resources needed to satisfy this are limited. This is the economic problem, if you can recall. Some natural resources can and will be completely exhausted or depleted in time, which means they will be finished, such as coal or oil. Such resources are called non-renewable natural resources. We've covered this in term 1. Other resources such as animals and trees can be planted or reared and are replaceable. These resources are called renewable resources. So renewable resources is resources that can be planted or reared and are replaceable. And non-renewable resources is resources that cannot be replaced and they will be completely exhausted or depleted in long time. The continued use of limited natural resources will eventually result in resources becoming fully depleted. To prevent this from happening, consumers, businesses, and government must all work together to ensure that the resources are used sustainably. Okay, sustainably, to ensure that the future generations, they also get the same resources. And we look at the last factor of production, which is entrepreneurship. And entrepreneurship is the entrepreneur's ability to combine all other factors of production to manage a successful business. Okay, it's the ability of the entrepreneur to combine all 4 factors of production to manage a successful business. Please know the definition of entrepreneurship. An entrepreneur is a person who converts a profitable idea into a business and who has the ability to combine all the factors of production to manage a successful business. An entrepreneur must be willing and be able to take risk. They must be willing to accept failure and develop new and innovative ideas. They are constantly working to find new ways of improving products, reducing costs, and increasing profit. Please, you need to know this paragraph thoroughly. An entrepreneur is a person who converts a profitable idea into a business and who has the ability to combine all factors of production to manage a successful business. An entrepreneur must be willing and able to take risks, accept failure, and develop new and innovative ideas. They are constantly working to find new ways of improving products, reducing costs, and increasing profits. Okay, so that brings us to the end of the factors of production. Okay, we have covered all four, which is capital, labor, natural resources, and entrepreneurship. Now we are going to look at the remuneration of factors of production. Number one, before we go further, what is remuneration? It's the payment or reward for services or products delivered. Remuneration means to reward or pay compensation to someone for work they performed. Similarly, each of the factors of production must be compensated or rewarded for their contribution to the production process. Remuneration of the four factors of production is as follows. What is the remuneration for capital? Its compensation for capital is done in the form of interest payment. So remuneration for capital is interest payment. Remuneration for labor is monthly salaries, weekly wages, which are paid to people who perform the work. And remuneration for natural resources is in the form of rent, for example, renting the piece of land. Okay, and the last one, remuneration for entrepreneurship, is profit. Okay, that is made from a sale of goods and services. Please, let's revise this. The four factors of productions, they all have remuneration. The remuneration for capital is interest payment. Remuneration for labor is salaries or wages. Remuneration for natural resources is rent, for example. And remuneration for entrepreneurship is profit. Okay. And this brings us to the end of lesson number 11 on factors of productions. We have looked at all four factors of production in detail, which are capital, labor, natural resources, and entrepreneurship. And lastly, we have just looked at the remuneration for each of the factors of production. So please go back and study the work, study the definitions, know them, memorize them, and revise your work on a daily basis. Okay, and this brings us to the end of our lesson for today. Thank you.